All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking one of the absolutely most fascinating transformations in modern music history. I mean, think about it. How exactly did two fiercely intelligent, incredibly demanding musicians take your standard conventional rock band format and just completely dismantle it? Well, through a sheer, totally uncompromising obsession with audio perfection, they built a completely unique jazz rock powerhouse. We're talking, of course, about Steely Dan.
To really get what they were all about, we have to start with their underlying philosophy. Co-founder Walter Becker perfectly summed it up in 1974 when he said, "We play rock and roll, but we swing when we play. We want that ongoing flow, that lightness, that forward rush of jazz." That brilliant little concept right there, that establishes the absolute core ethos that set them completely apart in the 1970s. Because while all their contemporaries were going all in on hard rock or this massive progressive bombast, Steely Dan was out there actively chasing the sophisticated, improvisational spirit of a smoky jazz club, but they were cleverly dressing it up in a super radio-friendly pop rock package.
And because of that, they became infamous for this really wild juxtaposition. They were basically the most cynical perfectionists in pop music. On the surface, you had this pristine, immaculately produced audio quality. It sounded flawless. But just beneath that glossy sheen, they were hiding some serious existential dread and really biting sarcasm. They basically masked their extreme perfectionism and super dark themes behind some of the absolute catchiest pop hits of the entire decade. Section 1. Jazz nerds in rock bodies. So, picture this. It's the late 60s, and Donald Fagen and Walter Becker meet at Bard College. Their musical DNA was just deeply rooted in the past. I mean, these guys grew up absolutely worshiping jazz legends like Duke Ellington, Miles Davis, and Charlie Parker. But, and this is absolutely crucial to their massive success, they clearly understood that pop music was the language of their generation. They couldn't just go out and play straight jazz if they actually wanted to reach people. So what do? They formed Steely Dan in 1971, cheekily naming themselves after a rather risque object in a William Burroughs novel, and they bring these two totally different musical worlds together on their 1972 debut album, Can't Buy a Thrill. And this right here perfectly illustrates their defining paradox. On one side, you've got this harmonically complex, flawless-sounding music. We're talking lush, extended chords, super smooth R&B grooves, and tricky syncopated rhythms. But then, on the flip side, you've got these gritty, highly sarcastic stories about Los Angeles' seedy underbelly, aging hipsters, hustlers, drug dealers. It was quite literally the sound of shiny pop meeting college-level jazz theory, telling dark stories of 1970s American decadence.
Section 2. Quitting the road. Now, to keep maintaining this incredibly complex musical vision, something obviously had to give. The live stage was just way too unpredictable for the exact perfect sounds they were hearing in their heads. And you can actually see this rapid evolution happening between 1972 and 1976. They started out as a somewhat normal, conventional band with Can't Buy a Thrill, but by the time Pretzel Logic dropped in 1974, and most definitely by the Royal Scam in 1976, the original touring members were actively getting sidelined. The whole live band concept was basically fading out, and their notorious studio era had officially begun.
So the really crucial takeaway here is this. They completely quit the road to become a studio-only project. They didn't just use the recording studio to document their music. They treated the studio itself, like the actual mixing boards, the microphones, the tape machines, as their primary instrument. Every single album from there on out became this obsessive, mad scientist audiophile experiment. Section 3. The Elite Session Masters. To pull off this flawless sound, they needed absolute, uncompromising precision. And they got it by literally treating the world's most elite session musicians like pieces on a chessboard. They just swapped them in and out to achieve total sonic nirvana. I mean, look at this staggering roster of talent. You've got jazz royalty like Wayne Shorter, who famously nailed his legendary Coltresque sax solo on the title track Aja on the very first take. You've got Bernard Purdie inventing the iconic Purdie Shuffle to give their tracks this incredibly sophisticated funk pulse. There's Larry Carlton just delivering a scorching, dizzyingly complex guitar solo on Kid Charlemagne, and of course, Steve Gadd providing that vivid, absolutely volcanic drumming that elevated their compositions to mythic status.
But hey, not everyone got to pull a Wayne Shorter one-take miracle. Take Dire Straits frontman Mark Knopfler, for instance. Fagen and Becker flew him all the way in because they just loved his specific sound. He was in the studio, recorded playing guitar for hours on the track Time Out of Mind. But when the final record actually came out, mere seconds of his exhaustive work were actually used. Literally just seconds. That is the level of ruthless, laser-focused editing we are talking about here.
Section 4. The peak of perfection.
Now, this obsession with sonic perfection, it started getting kind of maddening. 46. That's how many different takes they forced legendary session drummer Jeff Porcaro to do just to piece together the drum track for the song Gaucho. They would literally play the tune over and over from noon straight until 6, just going for the absolute perfect, immaculate drum track, completely refusing to keep anything else played that night, no matter how ridiculously tight the rest of the band was.
And the mixing process? Oh, just as agonizing. It required over 55 separate attempts just to perfect a simple 50-second fade-out on the song Babylon Sisters. 55! Just imagine sitting at a giant mixing desk, running the exact same 50 seconds of audio over and over 55 times until every single tiny fader movement is mathematically, undeniably flawless. And you know what they did when even the absolute best human drummers on the planet couldn't hit that microscopic level of precision? They literally built a robot. In 1978, they funded the creation of Wendell. Built by their engineer Roger Nichols for a staggering $150,000, Wendell was a custom drum machine capable of full-frequency sounds. It allowed them to move the snare and the kick drum completely independently. Wendell was so insanely advanced for its time that it actually got awarded its own platinum record plaque, no joke.
But man, this extreme level of perfectionism definitely had its casualties. During the Gaucho sessions, they spent weeks, literally weeks, working on a favorite track of theirs called The Second Arrangement. It was incredibly complex, and they absolutely loved it. But then, an assistant engineer accidentally erased the master tape. Yep. And because they just couldn't recapture the exact magic of those original, painstakingly crafted performances, the song had to be abandoned entirely. Just a completely heartbreaking loss in the endless pursuit of perfection.
Section 5. A lasting musical legacy. So despite that totally grueling process, the severe legal battles, and the deep personal tragedies going on during those Gaucho sessions, their meticulous recordings became the absolute gold standard, winning Grammys for Best Engineered Recording for both Aja in 1978 and Gaucho in 1981. Their albums literally became the benchmark that audiophiles and stereo salesmen used to test high-end audio equipment. I mean, they laid the entire groundwork for modern artists who admire their harmonic daring, influencing everyone from electronic pioneers like Daft Punk to modern jazz-funk bassists like Thundercat. They fundamentally proved, once and for all, that deep musical complexity and mainstream pop accessibility could beautifully coexist.
So, as we bring this explainer to a close, we really got to ask ourselves, after all the endless takes, the accidentally erased tapes, the staggering studio budgets, and the literal robotic precision, why does this obsessive perfectionism still matter to us today? Why do we still care so much about Steely Dan?
Well, I think it all boils down to this incredible quote from drummer Bernard Purdie. He said, "They wanted it perfect, but I gave it perfect in human." And that right there brilliantly captures the absolute magic of Steely Dan. Because through all that immense control, all that robotic precision, they still managed to capture deeply human art. They left us with music that forces us to listen deeply, to think critically, and through it all, to still tap our feet. It kind of leaves you wondering, doesn't it? Is perfection really the final endpoint? Or is it just the ultimate vessel for capturing the messy, beautiful human experience? Definitely something to think about next time you put on a pair of headphones. Thanks for hanging out for this explainer, and keep exploring.